How do professional Amazon sellers reprice their products on Amazon? As you know, 80% of all sales on Amazon comes from the buy box. Therefore, if you're doing arbitrage or wholesale, having effective repricing strategies is crucial. Let's find out how successful Amazon sellers reprice their products on the platform. My name is Samuel, and let's get started.
How do you reprice? Do you have some tips to give people? So number one, don't start repricing until your items have actually checked in. That's a big one that I see beginners do, is they'll set the min max and they'll press play and it's on back order and they don't know that they don't have their settings all set up, and then it's lowering their prices lower than it has to be. So wait until you have those items actually check in. And then especially during Q4, like, on that theme of squeeze and profit, with those items, try setting some of your rules to where it goes above the buy box price. Or you can try some of like the profit maximizing AI rules, right? Where it tries to squeeze a little bit of extra profit, prices above, and then a lot of times you'll see that buy box start to jump up a lot. Another good one is like if you guys set up conditional rules, especially within Q4, there's gonna be a lot of products where, as you start to stock out, so is everyone else, the prices are going up. So if you see that where it's like, oh, I'm on my last 5 units, let me switch to a little bit more profit focused rule, that type of thing, right? So there's a lot that you can jam on there, but hopefully that makes you guys a little bit more money there.
I typically set a minimum and a maximum price, which is, the basics, the minimum ROI and margin I'm willing to accept on a product. And then if I happen to be the lucky last person standing, how high I want to go. Yeah, I'll usually set a band where I'm always moving product, even down to close to break even, because I always want to be moving product. I'll even set certain rules if a product's really not moving, if it's over 90 days old or over 120 days old, and I'm going to encounter long-term storage fees, I might set a rule to get even more aggressive with a lower minimum price and maybe strategies to win the buy box more by undercutting people and just to get rid of the inventory. On the flip side, if I'm about to stock out of something too fast, I set my repricer to try to ratchet up as I go. And you can make a lot of money repricing up. It's not just about the minimum, it's also about maximizing profit when you're one of the last guys standing on a listing.
If you have a lot of different listings, how often do you look at the repricing?
Yeah, I'll go in about once a week, and honestly, it should probably become a daily thing at this point. I'll go in and check for a few basic things. So I'll check for listings that, oops, I forgot to reprice, period, and I should probably turn on the repricer. Listings where I've had very little buy box or uncompetitive price, I can filter for those and look at the list, and I'll probably update my minimums a little bit lower to start selling those again. And then I'll look at items where I'm really selling fast and it looks like I'm gonna stock out before I can get more stock in there, then I might get more aggressive. So I do like filtering certain views for certain conditions. I do it on a weekly basis, but it could be daily if you want to really get in there, or it could be bi-weekly or monthly, whatever cadence makes sense for each individual seller, but checking that stuff's very important.
Before repricing, I have to understand the trend on what I'm looking at the Keepa graph. So what I do is that I set up my Keepa graph for the whole year to identify things. So one of the most important for me is seeing the lowest price in time. That is my risk. If I'm profitable or breaking even at that, I'm good. I'm good to go. That's my worst case scenario. So that it will be like my minimum. Then what I do is I see the highest price over time. That will be like my ceiling. What I do is that I want to move between the lowest and the highest.
Right.
And that's where my repricing starts working. What we do is that we identify the oldest seller on the listing. So we use Keepa for that. And we identify that seller if it could be risky for us or not. Because if he was selling at the lowest point by that time of year and he's in the present, he could bring that price down again. It doesn't matter for me if in the last 3 months the price was different. Just being that seller on the listing, I just saw his history. Probably he has better pricing than I do, or probably he's buying more than I do, and that's why he has better pricing. So I have to see if I can manage that risk. If I want to sell faster and I see him, then I'll just implement my strategy like, okay, take that buy box right away, take your sales and go off the listing. If I see him that he's only getting into the listing, or he's just settling down, then I will tell my repricer, okay, let's do expected profit. It's between the low and the high. That's how we identify our opportunities inside Amazon. And another thing we do is that when we want to start getting buy box and we understand that we have a high margin, we call it the whip rule. So what it does is that it brings down the price, we get the buy box, and then immediately it sets up our highest price and we get some sales there. So in the transition of losing the buy box, we'll get sales and we can mitigate some losses and earn some really, really interesting margins. That's what we call the whip rule.
Number one, the integration you guys have with SellerAmp is great.
Right.
I do when I'm repricing, especially arbitrage items, is when I'm sending it out initially, I'm using that integration and I'm actually pricing it a lot higher than what the current buy box is, because most people don't realize you actually can get sales at higher than the buy box. So what I'll do is maybe 10 or 20% higher. And then as stock goes in, I'm kind of judging if there's sales or not. If there is sales, I keep it there. If not, I'm using one of your AI rules and it'll lower it slightly.
Well, I guess my biggest tip would be a lot of sellers commonly set their minimums based on ROI. The market doesn't care what you paid for your product. We set our repricing based on the market value of the product. We set a fairly tight minimum, and then we monitor our stock weekly, and if it hasn't had a sale, we'll adjust accordingly.
When you say that you have a fairly tight minimum, what do you mean by that?
So we set a sales price based on what we think the market will bear, and then we'll price just 5 to 10% under that, make sure that we don't cause price erosion in the market.
So I like to look at a year. Now, do I look at 1 year as a whole on every single product? No, only on questionable things. 90 days, probably a good time window. However, if you're coming into Q4 or just after Q4, you definitely want to look at that year-long gap, because obviously, if you're just looking 3 months, you're going to incorporate Q4. So you naturally are going to have that price spike, or the price could go down, right? So you want to look at the whole bigger picture to make sure that, one, Amazon didn't temporarily get out of stock on the product. Amazon's going to come back on it. It's not prone to IP complaints or some other issues. Yeah, that's why I like to look at the full history of the product for that 1 year.
But ultimately, you want to find a good software partner that helps you reprice up and down and sideways and in every way possible, because you don't want to deal with that, and prices fluctuate very, very quickly. Ultimately, I think that is one of the most important parts of the wholesale business, because it's all about the buy box. It's all about if you're winning it and if you're selling. And so a repricer is very, very important in that sense. My advice is always 3 to 5 products, at least in the wholesale world, then really start to think about automating your repricing.
We're getting to the end of our video. I hope you got many new ideas and repricing strategies from the top Amazon sellers. Remember, when selling on Amazon, it's essential to use the best Amazon repricer. Try out the BQool repricer with a 14-day free trial with its flexible AI rules. Will definitely help your Amazon business. I'll see you in the next one.